We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including all kinds of offseason trade and UFA speculation. Today we're taking a look at the Jason Robertson situation with the Dallas Stars. There's still a lot of rumblings that there could be significant change coming out of Dallas. Still question marks around the head coach and around one of their star players. And Robertson, we're going to discuss why would they consider trading him? How does it make sense for the team? What teams could he possibly land with? I know there's been a lot of talk yesterday about the Senators or the Ducks. Today we're going to take a look at a few others that might actually make more sense both for the player and for the team. Speaking of Ottawa, though, could they possibly take a run at one of the top UFAs on the market and provincial rival Toronto Maple Leafs forward Mitch Marner? I know there was discussion between Dave Pagnotta and Jeff Marek today, thinking that owner Michael Andlauer might be down for something like that. We'll discuss how that discussion went and how serious of a contender they could be in that situation. Plus, we're also going to talk about Jonathan Marchessault and Marty Necas as well, potentially being on the move again. Plus, we have some interesting comments from Brind'Amour on the whole handshake situation lined with the Florida Panthers. Plus, we have a bunch of signings today, including a big one in Philly. All that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here today, a lot of big talking points. We'll get into some of the offseason speculation here in just a moment, but first I want to look at a few other news items, including some signings, including one that's a little bit more significant than the others. But first one is the Lightning have signed depth defenseman Steven Santini. He gets a 2-year contract. It's a two-way deal. Most likely going to be spending time in their AHL team, but will be a call-up option who does have some NHL experience. We also got the Edmonton Oilers. This one's a little bit interesting. Signing, still kind of considered a prospect, but Robbie Harventi, who they picked up from Ottawa last offseason in a trade for Xavier Bourgault. They signed him to a 1-year, two-way deal, which I found surprising because earlier this offseason, not long ago, there was word that he had signed a 3-year deal or a 2 or 3 year deal in Europe. So I'm not sure what's changed with that situation. I'm not sure if he's gotten out of that contract or maybe it has like an NHL out clause. Some of those deals do have that. I know we've seen other players do that where they sign a deal in Europe and there's a clause attached saying if I can get an NHL contract, then I can be released to go, and maybe that's what happened. Maybe he wasn't expecting one from Edmonton and it came through. We'll see. Either way, he's battled a lot of injuries the past couple of years and has very limited NHL action, only a few games with the Senators before the trade. So we'll see how things work out for Harventi. The Winnipeg Jets today also found out that one of their younger players, Rasmus Kupari, who came over from the Los Angeles Kings and along with Gabe Vilardi for the Pierre-Luc Dubois deal, has left the NHL and has signed a 2-year deal over in the Swiss League. Kupari did see a decent amount of bottom six, fourth line duty for the Jets since being acquired, but certainly, as the season goes along, he was not really a factor for the playoffs. It was like an extra, so kind of seeing the writing on the wall and doesn't see himself having a very big role there or opportunity to grow, so decided to head over in the Swiss League. And the Philadelphia Flyers today, the biggest signing of the day, signed Noah Cates to a 4-year contract. Of course, Cates, like players like Tyson Foerster, were needing new deals. Cates gets a 4-year deal at $4 million per season. We've seen some of their younger players make big strides here lately. It seems like a pretty reasonable contract for Cates, so we'll see how things work out in that scenario as well. And then later in the day, we found out that the Vancouver Canucks are bringing back defenseman Derek Forbort, which was a little bit surprising, but not really. It's a 1-year deal, $2 million. So, that's not a bad contract for a veteran third-pair defenseman. So we'll see. I know he seemed to enjoy his time there. I know some people were saying that Forbort's really good buddies with Brock Besser, so they're wondering with him sticking around, is there any chance Brock might? I know there was some Vancouver media that thought there was a possibility. It seemed slim, though, that the Canucks and Brock would take one more shot at it and see if they can't come to terms to keep him around. But it still seems, from what we've heard, more likely than not that he hits market and probably leaves. But you just never know. If they want to put their best foot forward for a last stab at it, maybe they can figure things out. We'll see. Other news as well, the Carolina Hurricanes coach and general manager spoke to the media today, Rod Brind'Amour and Eric Tulsky. One of the things that Brind'Amour had to talk about was the whole situation that he ran into with Paul Maurice and the handshake line after the Florida Panthers eliminated the Hurricanes in the conference final. Of course, we all know, we all seen it, we've all heard it and discussed it to some degree here, but we know that there was an awkward conversation between the two. Of course, lots of history there. They know each other well from their time both being in Carolina when Rod was a player. But Maurice clearly had changed his opinion earlier in the playoffs about coaches being involved in the handshake line. He talked to Craig Berube, which I think, though, in that case, that he had done it, wasn't on the ice. I think it was ahead of time. Maybe before the series started, I'm not sure. But prior to that, Maurice was getting in the handshake line, and there's lots of proof. I know I went back and looked just to see. And during the first round against Tampa, he was there in the handshake line. Going back to last year, like when they beat the Oilers for the Stanley Cup, he was there in the handshake line. So it's something that he just changed his mind on. Now, a lot of people have different opinions on why that was. It just, for some people, seemed weird that the two teams that he had history with as a coach and connected to before, Toronto and Carolina, that's when things happened. And maybe it's nothing to do with that. We don't know. Maurice would probably never say if it was, but he kind of went on his rant saying that he felt it wasn't a place for coaches to be involved. It was for the players. The coaches are not on the ice battling, and that it's really for them. But Rod Brind'Amour completely disagreed with Maurice and said so. He said he was really kind of taken aback with Maurice's comments, and he stayed out of the handshake line to kind of honor his request, so to speak. But he said in the future, after having time to kind of think about it, that he doesn't really like the idea and will go back to being involved with it. He said essentially that he was very confused and taken aback by the Maurice request. In the future, he'll definitely do it again because he's had some pretty meaningful moments. He's like, in that case, we lost the series. Like, you want to be a graceful, gracious loser and have a chance to shake your opponent's hand, wished him well. And he said in some cases, there's lots of players that I may have known, or for example, he said when they played the Devils in round one, there was a bunch of Devils that are former Hurricanes that he coached for a long time and had a really good, impactful, meaningful, quick conversation with them there. And just, it's not about camera time. He's like, I get enough camera time. He's like, I'm an NHL head coach. Every time my team takes a penalty, the camera's on me. Every time there's a bad turnover, mistake, he said, there's lots of reasons why the camera's on me all the time. I don't need more of it. It's not about that. It's just about being gracious to your opponent, either as a winner or a loser, and having those key moments that there's been so many good ones over the years and a lot of relationships and interconnected people that he definitely does not agree with Maurice. I know there's been a lot of people say they agree, and there's been a lot of people say they disagree. And, at first I kind of said I thought Maurice wasn't really wrong. I just thought it was weird how he went about it. And I kind of agree with Brind'Amour too. And I think it really just boils down to personal preference. And it seems like most coaches, Maurice is the only guy we've heard say anything kind of about it. I know a lot of people talking lately about, are we getting too much of Paul Maurice? He speaks to the media. Is he, just the way he talks and everything. It's been 3 straight years in the finals. Is he getting just a little bit much at times? Some people feel that way, that it's just, overkill. But hey, he's been, like I said, their team has been in the finals 3 straight years. So much success that they are interfaced because they're in the spotlight, right? Because they're one of the teams, or league's best teams, and we just have to kind of suck it up and deal with it. It makes, in some cases, for some fans, it makes them easier to root against them, but I don't really think for that doesn't really matter to me. It's just you don't want to feel like they're being cocky or that they're trolling or anything of that nature. And I know with some of the comments they made when they beat out the Leafs and stuff, it felt like trolling, saying, because they completely demolished them in a couple of games, and yet here they are on the post-game media saying that they're a better team than that. They're so hard to play against. They've improved so much. They don't deserve all this hate. And they lost ridiculously bad, and their star players did not show up. So yeah, to me, some of the stuff you heard at Tkachuk and Marchand, it does sound like trolling, because how can they believe that themselves? I know they were there, and I know maybe it felt harder than what it looked like to the fans, but I don't know. It's just a little bit much there. But interesting comments from Brind'Amour that he's definitely going back to the other way of doing things and does not agree with Paul Maurice's opinion in that situation. And really, I think everybody's entitled to their own. Now, there's still a lot of rumblings about the Dallas Stars, and we're going to talk about them here a fair bit in the next few minutes. But I know Kevin Weeks had one of his cryptic tweets. He does this a lot. He'll put out a picture. Sometimes you have to figure out what it is, what it means. Sometimes it's more obvious. Then he'll just have like the eyeball emoji saying kind of, I'm watching this. There's something coming, some news, something big. Kind of gets you thinking. It's very much engagement, on social media for sure. But every time he's done it, there, majority of the time at least, something did come out that was significant. So, but he's not the only one, because he posted a picture. This one wasn't complicated at all. It was just a Dallas arena with the eye emoji. But we've heard from a few other NHL connected insiders, including Friedman, I've heard Pagnotta, Chris Johnson, like the Sarah Valley. They've all kind of weighed in saying they're still hearing that there could be significant change coming out of Dallas. I know Friedman even said today that he's not saying that they're making a coaching change, but he's still hearing that it sounds like they might be contemplating it, and there's, not saying for sure we're going to see these massive changes, but it sure sounds like they're really thinking hard about what to do here, and that there could be some big things on the table. Whether or not they proceed with it may not, be maybe another story. We'll have to wait and see. But we're still kind of waiting on guidance here in the future of Peter Deboer. It sounds like from what Pagnotta was saying that he really kind of upset not just Jake Ottinger, but a lot of players. And there was other situations apparently besides that goalie pulling game in that final game there when they lost that was going on. There were other things that were handled in that Western Conference final that players were unhappy with. So what exactly all those details are, we do not know, but lots going on in Dallas from that perspective. We're still waiting on clarity on. We don't know. Maybe something comes out tonight before this video gets posted. If so, I'll have to update things later. But the other thing is about trades. There's lots of talk. It seems like the main top player getting all the attention now in the rumor mill is Jason Robertson. So looking at this, it all kind of started first with, I think Jeff Marek might have been the first NHL connected reporter, insider, whatever, to kind of bring up his name. And he mentions Ottawa and Anaheim. And his first report is teams to watch should this proceed. So his report wasn't saying they're absolutely moving him or anything, just that he's hearing rumblings that it could happen and that his name is out there and that he thinks these are a couple teams that are showing interest and that could be, ones involved. Well, obviously, I get all these fans up in arms. I know I've seen tons of Sens fans doing mock trades pretty much all day through social media on X especially. A lot of them seem to want to think that to get Jason Robertson, they'd have to trade Drake Batherson. I'm like, I don't really see why you would do that. As much as Robertson, you could argue that Robertson's a better player than Drake. He's put up more goals, more 5-on-5 points, but you can have an argument that you need another top six forward and you'd like to add another scorer up there on your top two lines. But if you take one of your top guys out of the mix, and he's been he might be a little inconsistent at times, but he was your second leading scorer. He has a phenomenal contract. You take that out of the mix, 70 points for under $5 million. Good luck finding that. So yes, is Robertson an upgrade? You could argue that it is, but I don't know that's significant enough that you're really going to get that much further ahead. Right? So ideally you don't want to subtract, you need to add. Now I know the cap is a situation that makes it complicated, but you probably try to find a way to move on from a shorter term contract like a David Perron or one of those guys that's older and may not be around long anyways, right? He's making $4 million. He's only making not even $1 million less than Drake. So to me, I think there's easier ways to go about this. Now, what's Dallas going to want is another question, and can they even have the assets to pull it off? Another question again, and we don't know the answers to that. I'm also not completely sold that Jason Robertson is the perfect fit for Ottawa. So you looked at Anaheim. And the big question here is, why would Dallas do this? Yes, they've been to the conference final for 3 years in a row. They've lost every one of them, but why would they just want to up and trade a 25-year-old player who's got still one more year left before he's an RFA, and then he's going into his unrestricted years, and he's been a model consistency player? Why would they do that? So here's kind of, after looking into it and analyzing it, here's my thoughts. Well, the one is that he has a year left on his contract, $7.75 million. So for what you're getting from Jason Robertson today, good contract. That's a good value for what he's been giving them. However, like I said, 1 year left, restricted with arbitration rights after that. His next contract is going to probably be a substantial raise. He's had a 40-goal season and a couple 30-goal seasons, hit 100 points once, 80 points a few times. He's going to be getting a big raise. It's going to be, I don't know what it's going to be. It's going to go to at least 10. It could be more than that. Now, a team like Dallas has the state tax advantage, so they can probably get away paying a little less than other teams, but I'm not even sure what his market value is going to be, but I know it's going to be 10 plus. So you're going up $2 to $3 million on it. So obviously his next cap hit is going to be a big change. So there's that. You got to consider that they're in a very tight cap situation. Now, with the other moves that they've made, he's not your top winger anymore. Mikko Rantanen is. You traded for Rantanen and you signed him to a big-time deal. So his role has changed. Now, he's still putting up good points. To me, from what I've seen, Robertson, he's been most effective playing with Rupe Hintz. Obviously, from what we've seen the lines in the playoffs a lot, I know Robertson missed time with injury. Rantanen was playing a lot with Hintz. Not saying he can't play with somebody else, not saying they can't juggle their lines, but it's just his role on the team is not what it was before Rantanen. And that also is just a fact. Are they going to want two wingers making, 10 to 12 or 11, $12 million? They may not. From a cap perspective, they might think that's too top heavy, and they may not want to be able to go there. So that's the why as to why they're looking at this. But besides Ottawa, besides Anaheim, who are the other teams? Well, we've heard a lot of the teams that are in on Mitch Marner are probably going to have to have plan B. There's a bunch of teams that want to talk to Mitch and would love to sign him. You're looking at, from what we've heard, Utah, who everybody keeps saying, watch Utah, they want to make a big move. You've heard about the Los Angeles Kings might be the front runner for Marner right now, from what we've heard. You've heard about Vegas. We've heard about Carolina wanting to add a top scorer. Not all these teams can have Mitch Marner. Only one can. There's only one guy. So if you look at the free agent market, there's not a lot out there. There's kind of a major fall off. You're looking at your next wingers of being Ehlers and Besser, and not saying they're terrible players, but they're not at that level. They're not close. Jason Robertson would be well above them. So if they're seriously thinking about trading him, they would probably be best to kind of hold on a little bit here, wait for Marner to find a home, and then you're going to have a bigger market to up your ante for the price tag, because you're going to be talking to all the Marner the teams that didn't get him, all the runners up here. And you would probably throw Toronto in that mix too. They're obviously a team that would be looking to replace him, and he would obviously come in cheaper. And of course, his brother plays there too, at least for now. So that might be appealing to him, especially if Nick sticks around. To have them on the same team would be fun for them. So there's lots of teams out there that I think would make more sense. You can even throw the Rangers in the mix. We know they want to make big changes, probably a little more complicated for them. So I think that's why they're doing it. I think that's how it more likely plays out if it happens. But the problem here, like I think with Dallas, is they're going to want to bring in another player that's going to be a scorer, but they're going to try to find a cheaper way of doing it. A more valuable, what they consider second line player. So, looking to a team like Ottawa with guys like Batherson or any of those other guys, that kind of makes sense to me. Like, that would be the kind of player they would target. And the other reason I think his name has been bantied about is Bruce Garriock had an article in the Ottawa Sun saying that the Senators have a lot of right shot forwards, and therefore teams are looking because they're harder to find, and because they have an abundance of right shot players, that teams are looking and saying, well, maybe they might want to move one of them. Who could they move? And then kind of, obviously his name comes up because he's one of the top ones. That's really all it is. But unless Ottawa can find a major way to upgrade, it just doesn't make any sense to move him when he's arguably your, look how important he is to your power play and how important he is to your overall scoring. So it's got to be a massive upgrade. Otherwise, it's not happening. Now, speaking of Ottawa, and speaking of Mitch Marner, is there any way that Marner goes to the provincial rival? I'm going to start this by saying the odds probably aren't good. But Jeff Marek and Dave Pagnotta had an interesting conversation about this on Marek's show, The Sheet, today. And I just wanted to kind of throw in what they were talking about and found it interesting. So obviously Marek brings us, he got to know owner Michael Landlauer when he was more involved in the junior ranks. super hyper competitive guy. We know that the progress this team has made getting into the playoffs and everything, that they're going to want to keep that rolling and find a way to upgrade. And they do want to add another guy in the top six who can give them some more points and goals. Well, obviously Marner fits that description. Now, and saying that they would love nothing more than to probably stick it to one of their rivals to get a player from them, which weakens their rival and helps them get better. Now, they all acknowledge that they fully suspect Ottawa will be in the conversation and will push to at least speak with his camp and to see if they can be a player in all of this. So, again, it would be complicated for them. They'd probably have to shed some salary to make sure they can bring in the other pieces that they need to round out their roster. But it would be a major, major addition. I'm not sure who they trade to make some space. But as of today, they have the space to sign them. But they'd have to hold on. Like, you know, then you get like, okay, they still got to hopefully do Claude Giroux. And they still need a couple other little forward sign. And, like, you know, they wouldn't have to shed a lot of money, but they would have to shed some. So, you know, yeah, would it be a way to stick it to the Leafs? Sure. Is Andlauer a super hyper competitive owner who'd like to do something like that? Sure. But at the end of the day, Marner has a big say in all this. And, you know, they just don't. They said that they expect Montreal and Calgary, amongst the other Canadian teams, to want to speak to him and make a push for it as well. But at the same time, the general consensus is that if he leaves Toronto, the likelihood of him signing in Canada with another team, probably not great. That's why they said right now it seems like LA might be the front runner more so than Vegas. The feeling is that Vegas might want more of a Sam Bennett type. The feeling around Bennett is that he most likely stays in Florida, by the way. But that type of player, not a Marner type. So we'll see. But Vegas and LA have been two of the other teams mentioned. Carolina's, Utah. They seem to be the four teams getting the most attention out there. There's still, I know a lot of the betting sites are high in Chicago. I've seen some Chicago media say that they don't expect Chicago and Kyle Davidson to make an offer. So I'm not really sure what intel the betting sites might have on the Hawk, because their odds are good. They're right up there with the Leafs, so it's hard to imagine how that could play out. But yeah, it was an interesting conversation about Marner ending up in their provincial rival, and that would really throw a whole new curve in the Battle of Ontario for sure. Although I think everybody can agree, I want to talk about it because it's interesting. Is it probably going to happen? No, probably not, but it's fun to think about. A couple of the names to watch as well. Jonathan Marchessault is definitely being shopped, according to enough sources out of Nashville. The main update I have on that situation is some of the Nashville media are saying that the Predators, if they can find a way to move the Marchessault contract, that they're probably not expecting much of a return. This is going to be more of a cap dump. I don't know if it's going to be at a point where they'd have to add an incentive. I'm not necessarily thinking it's going to be that type of deal, but that the return will be small. And it's more about freeing up cap space so they can kind of get that money back and go do something else with it. So we had heard before that he was open to going to Montreal because that's his home province. We don't know if Montreal has any interest or where things stand with that. But that's the update on Marshall, that the return not expected to be big. And Marty Necas' name is apparently out there as well. Of course, we know the Rantanen deal between Colorado and Carolina. This might end up backfiring on both clubs, possibly. We know Rantanen didn't stay in Carolina, wasn't happy there. Necas had a little bit of term contract. He signed a 2-year deal with the Canes before the trade, so he had this year, and he still has one more. So they don't have to make a rush move here if they don't want to. But there's some rumblings out of Colorado that he may not have been the most thrilled with ending up there and how the season went, that he's uncertainty over his long-term future. It's been mentioned by enough reporters that the feeling is that there might be something to it. Whether or not the Avs rush into this or not, I don't know. Clearly, like I said, he's under contract for another year. They don't have to make a rush decision. But if his name, we'll have to wait and see over the next few weeks how things go. That the Avalanche might pivot if they feel like he's going to end up trying to get out of there anyways. And they want players who want to be there, clearly. So, again, his name was out there a lot with the Hurricanes the year or two before because he may not want to stay there long term. Where does he really want to be? I don't really know. And is he going to try to force his way to another club? Time will tell. But there are some rumblings out there. We're just kind of waiting for more reporters to kind of substantiate that to see if there really is something to it or if it might be kind of overblown. But let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumor updates in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.